Good morning on this beautiful Monday morning. How are you today? Have you slept well? Have you slept? Pretty good questions for those of us dealing with anxiety and depression. And it's absolutely still warm here. We've hit autumn, northern hemisphere's hit spring, and summer's having a hard time giving up here, so we've still got pretty warm days. How did you go last week with, identifying different steps that you'd like to take? Let me know. And if you're here for the replay, do hashtag replay. And if you're here this morning at any time, say g'day so I can say g'day back as well. Feel free to ask questions along the way or when I finish down below, because I'm always happy to help wherever I can, either to research or let you know one next step. Okay, so this morning I want to talk to you about depression in particular, going from paralysed to motivated, because it is paralysing and it does leave us without motivation, and this can happen seemingly out of nowhere, and it's because our brain does trigger into depression like we have an anxiety trigger. The anxiety trigger can be more readily recognised because we know that in that moment the fear is paralysing, or our mind's going one way and our body's going another way is basically it. But because we are aware our prefrontal cortex is offline, it's not connected to the amygdala, our emotional centre, anymore, because we can't make our emotions rational. We can't get them within ourselves. It's like, why are my thoughts going in one direction? Why do I feel overwhelmingly either afraid or emotional? What's happening for me? And with our prefrontal cortex offline, we lose so much. We lose our perception. For one thing, it just goes. We lose our cognitive function. God. Without it, we can't put order into place. And also, when we've been triggered, even if it's at home and it's minimal, I know for me, I used to walk around and I'd look down and my knees or my shins would be bruised all the time, and I'd never know or never remember how it happened. And our memory, oh my goodness, we lose access to our memory big time. So these are challenges that are very real, that are happening at a neurological and biological level that impact our physiology as well. And I've been trying to come up with analogies that really impress or really give us, or quantify is the best word, quantify how great these neurological and biological triggers are in us, in that we have no control over when it happens. We don't know why it happens. Well, we do from the perspective that it was wired into us in childhood, but we don't know why it's happening as an adult. And that is one of the most incredibly frustrating things that I've come across all these decades. Is I'm an adult now, so why is this happening? And the why is because it was wired into our deep brain in childhood when there was overwhelm, and it only has to happen once, but more often than not it happens more than once, where we have no language, we have no ability to process what's happening. And I know for me at one stage, like when before school years, my parents are separated for at least 3 weeks that I'm aware of. And the impact on me of losing my mother, having no language around it, not being told where my mum was, there's no known quantity of whether she was coming back or not. And especially I was staying with my favourite grandparents, whom I love and loved all their life. But it's still the internal impact on me as a child was massive. And I didn't even realise that until recent times, how big that impact neurologically and biologically was for me. So everything that science is teaching us now is absolutely quantifying what we've already been through and how it's impacting our life. But for today, let's just look at depression as the main focus in order that we can connect to that and what's happening for us, especially because depression is so paralysing when the trigger happens. And I spoke about this last week because it happened to me Saturday a week ago, that I had 2 full days of feeling joy, going to bed happy and full of such joy with where my life's going, what I'm doing. And then Saturday morning I woke up, so I hadn't been out anywhere, I hadn't done anything, I'd gone to bed happy, I was sleeping, and I woke up having had the depression trigger go off in my brain. And as I lay there and I couldn't move, I went, what's going on? And that's when I realised, because I'm aware of what's happening for me internally, I went, oh my goodness, I'm not getting out of this bed because I literally can't move because I'm triggered into depression. And so I knew that the only option I had was to go to sleep. But what I do now is I let that happen. You know, obviously my body and brain need that time, but what I did was as soon as I woke up and could move, I got myself up, dressed, into gym. Now, I didn't actually exercise. I ended up talking to a lady at gym about the neuroscience of it all, and then went to a girlfriend's, etc., etc. But the thing is, I'm taking back control of my life, even though the trigger goes off. So it used to be the same for the anxiety. The trigger would go off, and I laugh now, but at the time it was challenging. I'd be standing in public talking to somebody in an air-conditioned place, and I'm standing there with perspiration pouring off my face, and I know they're standing there going, we're in air conditioning, why is she perspiring? But too polite to say anything, which is good. And so the trigger, I'd have to stay and work through the trigger. But anxiety is different, all right? I could do that. With depression, the trigger absolutely sidelines us. There's no 2 ways around it. As soon as I worked out that the depression trigger had gone off in my brain, I knew that I would sleep. And if you have depression, you know this, because you can fall asleep for hours and then wake up and it's like, okay, we can go now. We can move now. And that, I think I slept for about 4 hours, and sometimes at night, not for me now, but in the past, I would never get 4 hours sleep all at once. So can you see the difference, how depression hits you? You can be going through stages of not being able to get to sleep. If you get to sleep, you wake up, like for me, I'd wake up 20 minutes later and having an anxiety attack going, why? And then if you manage to sleep longer, sometimes you only get 2-3 hours sleep. So you know the depression trigger's gone off because you're asleep, like I was, for like 4 hours straight and hadn't moved. So what are we going to do to help us begin to get hold of what is really happening internally, what we can do about it, and how we can improve one step at a time our quality of life? So the first thing we want to do is reinforce that we have been triggered and it is out of our control. You can see from my experience of having 2 really joyful, happy days, sleeping well, and waking up being triggered into depression, that we have zero control over when our brain gets triggered. What do you do in the middle of the night? Say, well, sorry, you can't be triggered now. It doesn't work like that at all. In that space, we are then giving ourselves compassion. Instead of beating ourselves up and saying, you're an adult, you should be able to get up and get on with it. beating ourselves up doesn't work. It's not productive for us. It's not moving us in a positive direction. Or even ask ourselves, is talking to myself like this moving me in a positive direction and in order that I can have the most productive day, living my best life possible? And when you ask yourself that question, of course, we say no, well, it's not. So how am I going to turn this around? And the first thing I'm going to do is say, this was totally out of my control. I had no say in it. It's happening. So now I can just ease up, be really soft and gentle, take it easy and go, right, I can deal with what's going to unfold during the trigger. So, and I've just talked about how anxiety and depression have similar responses. So we're triggered, it's a different part of the brain, but I can't tell you the depression part of the brain that gets triggered because it's still under scientific wraps at this point in time. I did find out it's referred to as C25, but as yet we don't know, but it's there because when they put electrical impulses into that spot, people feel so much better and they feel motivated and able to get up and get out of major depressive disorder. So it's there and we are triggered. The one thing that's really important to understand and to remind ourselves of is that the prefrontal cortex, shown in brain scans for both depression and anxiety, is offline. It's not connected into our amygdala. Our system is offline. It's like a computer having a virus, and we have to fight through the different bits to unpack it in order to get rid of the virus. All right? So we need to address each bit. With the prefrontal cortex, that means that basically no access to memory, no access to perception, no access to control, order, just all gone out the window, temporarily though. Okay, now, when this happens, if you're like me and you're at the stage where you go, right, I just know I've got to sleep in order to be able to move, then that's what you do. You sleep until you can move. If you're awake and you're not at that sleep stage but you still feel paralysed internally, then know that your prefrontal cortex is still offline, so you're not connected into order. You're going to feel emotional and not able to understand why. This is normal for being triggered. You're not going to be able to put it into an order, and that is one of the most frustrating things, is when the prefrontal cortex is offline. It just is. I want you to sit down and make a note of your thoughts. So literally, and I mean literally, grab a notepad or book. It doesn't have to be pink and sparkly. There was just the first one I grabbed, it came up. But just grab a notebook, have it right where you sit down and breathe out. Like push the air out and sit there and write down what your thoughts are. This is so important because if we're not listening to our thoughts, then we can't address what the truth is. You will find that due to past history, the thoughts are negative. It's not that you're a negative person, okay? It's not. It's just that your thoughts over time have tried to jump onto the same bandwagon of negativity in order to keep you safe. It's not who you are. But in order to put back that order in, I've got to address what the thoughts are. What are my thoughts saying about me? What are the thoughts saying about what I can and can't do? So if I'm sitting there and I can't move my body because I'm paralysed, my thoughts are so negative, if I write them down and I start continually breathe out, all right? Because we want to change around the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system as well. Then I can sit there and say, is this my truth that I can't move? Hang on. No, I'm an adult. I am going to be able to move. It's not going to feel comfortable moving. That's the challenge. it won't feel comfortable, because we have to have the depression and the biological, neurological, reaction to the trigger happening, but then we've still got to move. So if you can do that, say to yourself, right, for the next 5 minutes, and use time. Time will help you go, right, what is the truth and what isn't. It helps you stop avoiding doing things, because in this space that happens, it feels like everything is going to take forever. Everything is too hard to do. There is no time and space perception happening at all. So what we need to do to begin to reclaim it is go, right, I'm just going to get up and do the dishes even though I feel garbage. I'm just going to do this. And we are the only ones that can make ourselves go, right, I understand that it's a trigger, and I understand that I'm going to have to make my body and brain move in order that I can begin to reclaim me and my life. All right? Use the affirmations, I am safe and I can, as much as you want, and reinforce that you are safe, you're at home, I am safe, I can do this. Or even if I'm at work, I'm in a safe environment, because we are teaching our brain that we can move because I am safe. All right? I can do this because I am safe. And get up and do the dishes and realise that it only takes you 2 minutes anyhow. All right? When you attach time into what you need to do, then you're grounding yourself more as well. And you're speaking the truth that I can do this, and it's not going to take me half an hour. I got up and I did it, and it only took, I don't know, it depends on the size of the family, 10 minutes. But you can do it. And it's not about pushing yourself into disassociation, where in disassociation I do things out of the strength of my mind instead of involving my whole self. All right? And that's something that I address in the trauma-informed movement. We've got to slow down and breathe and build in that mindfulness of right here, right now. Absolutely plan your next steps. So if I get up and do the dishes and I need to sit down again, then I'm going to sit down, and depending on how severe the depression trigger is, you're either going to need a nap again, which you can't avoid. It's not something that you want, but you can't avoid. So you have a quick nap, but then you plan that the next step is, okay, I'm going to put a load of washing on the next period of time that I wake up, and I'm going to time that in order that I'm grounding myself again in this reality. You're taking charge of your reality by having intent as to where you're going just in this moment in time. And I can't impress upon you how important this is to do. It was the very early stages of me beginning to be able to be well and saying, right, well, I had no language that I have now. I said, okay, I can't do this right now. I do have to sit down. First of all, I had to get out of bed, but that's a whole other chat show. This is a stage where I could sit down, and I started living with intent. What was I going to do with what I could do at the time I could do it? Encouragement. Encourage yourself. Tell somebody what's happening for you, whether it's in our online group where you are emotionally safe, whether it was with somebody. Look, none of my closest friends struggle with depression or anxiety, but my closest friends I can ring and say, look, I've been triggered by depression, I'm struggling, I am okay, but I will guarantee you every single time that you reach out and connect, you're going against what the mental health challenge says, which is you are on your own and you are alone, you are lonely, you have to be on your own, you're not worthy, and so much more. And you want to keep doing that and being able to be honest and say, look, yes, I'm struggling, but this is what I'm doing. And then when I tell my friends that it's happened, they'll check in every few days or whatever, just to make sure, look, are you okay? You doing okay? And yep, I'm doing okay. This is what's happening. They're okay with that because I don't burden them and go on and on. If I need to have tears, I will, because it is incredibly frustrating to have your life, especially when you're forward motivated, to all of a sudden be ripped out from underneath you, and you go, what the? Okay, so I probably use stronger language because I get really frustrated. But it's like, if I don't connect with somebody, then I'm doing myself a disservice, and I'm not being honest in my relationships either. And it's just so healthy to reach out. And we have to break free of that, there's nobody there for me, because in childhood there wasn't. And that's just how life was for millions of us around the world in childhood, because there was no language. There was no emotional intelligence at all back then. Okay, there was no internet. Remember those days? No internet. Okay, I hope that's helped. Take what you can today. Implement what you can today. Build into yourself the increasingly deeper awareness of what's stopping you living with intent, just one day at a time. Because I can absolutely guarantee you that if you do this one day at a time, it does become easier to say, right, this is what I've got to do, and then I'm getting up and I'm doing this. It's taking back charge of what's trying to run your life through no fault of your own. You are not at fault. You didn't create this. You had no intention of living your life like this, and I know this because I'm walking those roads too, and I'm walking out of them now more successfully each time that this is happening. Okay? I love you all heaps. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this helps, and I hope it's an encouragement that it's not your fault and that you can begin to reclaim your life one step at a time, one day at a time. All right, blessings and dreams, and I will see you again tomorrow morning. Bye for now.